Item number 2, consider approving a resolution to adopt a supplemental budget to defray expenses, to authorize additional financing sources, and to authorize budgetary transfers between funds or between spending agencies within a fund for Mesa County, Colorado. Diane Giakowski, Budget Manager, to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. Diane Giakowski, Budget Manager. Today we have for you our second quarter amendment to the 2026 fiscal year budget for Mesa County. These amendments allow us to adjust the budget throughout the year, to update it with new information about additional grant revenues or unexpected expenditures that occur since the adoption of the budget at the end of 2025. And I will have 2 resolutions for you today. One is to actually amend the budget, and the second is to amend our authorized staffing level. Here I have for you a high-level overview of the changes that we're making to the budget, with the general fund specifically called out because that's where most of the changes are occurring. We are adding a total of $1.7 million in revenues to the general fund, $1.6 in expenditures, for a benefit to fund balance of about $100,000. And I will go over the changes in the following slides. For all other funds, some small updates. We're adding revenues in the amount of $10,000, expenditures around $97,000, for a use of fund balance of $87,000. And so starting with the general fund, our Animal Services Department received an estate donation of $250,000. So we're going to be adding the revenue and appropriating that for kennel and yard upgrades. For our finance division, we received additional opioid settlement funding over the original allocation that we had budgeted for. So we're going to be adding $1.4 million in those pass-through funds to the budget. So we add the revenue and then appropriate the funds towards programs that are approved by the opioid board. Our facilities department conducted a tax study so they could file for solar tax credits. The study was $15,000, but we're adding that to the budget, and we anticipate it to be offset by the revenue from those future tax credits that we'll be receiving. Our Sheriff's Office received some additional grant funding, $117,000 CAFA grant. That's Emergency Management Community Assistance Funds, and those go to offset the cost of wildfire mitigation efforts. And they also received a $9,000 VAIL grant to cover travel to a COVA conference. COVA is Colorado Organization for Victim Assistance. So we're adding the revenues and expenditures for those 2 grants that they received. And then finally, our Natural Resources Department is going through a reorganization. With the departure of our director, we are going to be splitting up this department. Parks Division is moving to our facilities. Trails and Weed and Pest divisions are moving back to Public Works. And so the budget impact for this reorganization is limited to moving those Weed and Pest employees to the Road and Bridge Fund, since they're now under that division, as well as removing the Natural Resources Director position. For all other funds, some minor updates. The capital fund, we have a $35,000 change order related to the Justice Center Annex program, or project rather, and that's going towards structural floor design. Our public health fund, a couple things going on here. They did receive a new chronic disease grant, $152,000, which we're adding to the budget. However, they are also removing 3 revenue contracts that were not renewed, so that's a reduction of $218,000. So for a total net reduction of revenues of $64,000. And on the expenditure side, they are reducing expenditures accordingly in response to the reduced revenues, so that affects both personnel and supply costs. And then finally, our Conservation Trust and Fair Board funds. The board is matching all of the Fair Board revenue collections from 2025, and this is about $71,000, and so we are going to be transferring the funds to the Fair Board for that match. And that is everything in relation to updating the budget. Do you have any questions about the general fund or other funds?
Yeah, just a couple comments. You had mentioned with Animal Services, we received a $250,000 contribution from an estate, which is just an amazing contribution and a compassionate person. But family, is that a fairly easy process for people in the community to undergo?
I believe so. Yeah, it was, as you mentioned, an estate donation, and it was mentioned in the will, and pretty straightforward process. I think there might be some delays in terms of estate donations and settling the estate and receiving the funds. However, I think it is a pretty straightforward process, and people can designate in those donations certain departments they want to go to, certain projects they want to go to as well.
And then you mentioned the grant match with the Fair Board, so that's within the Board of Commissioners are matching that $71,000, just so people understand how that process works.
Yeah, so with the, there was an agreement from the board to help support the Fair Board by taking any collections that they received in 2025, and we would match that. And this contribution will be going towards various programs at the fairgrounds, and specifically maintenance and upgrades that they may need to do.
Okay. I don't have any further comments or questions. Does anyone from the audience have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve as published.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 2-0. This takes us to item 3. Consider approving a resolution to amend the 2026 authorized staffing levels for Mesa County, Colorado. Diane Giakowski, Budget Manager, to present.
Diane Giakowski, Budget Manager. This resolution is going to be formally updating our authorized staffing level for the county. I already went over most of these changes, but on the screen I have for you really just the departments that are being impacted by any changes in the supplemental. And so the big one is going to be our Natural Resources Department and the reorganization of those employees to other departments. So 9 FTs are moving for the parks employees to facilities. 3 FTs are moving weed and pest employees to public works. And 5 FTs for trails employees is also moving to public works. In addition, we are removing that Natural Resources Director position for the time being. We also had another reorg for public works. They wanted to move 1 FT from the traffic division to the engineering division, so just a shift in FTs across divisions there. And then we do have a 0.25 FT reduction. This was a defunded partial FTE during the original budget process, which we never updated the authorized staffing level for that. So bottom line, we are reducing our FTE count by 1.25.
I don't have any questions. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the item as published.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
You know, I need to back up. So you moved that, I need to second it, right? Or is that I've procedure, right? Okay, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 2-0.